Good morning, everyone. How are you today? Another week beginning, another week at home for some, and at work for some others. Everyone's still social distancing and being alert. Have you noticed during this time that things seem quieter? The roads have been less congested and the air is fresher, isn't it? And you can hear the birds clearly. Particularly first thing in the morning, the dawn chorus is really loud and it's beautiful. I suppose these are some of the benefits of this time, and I suppose in some ways the earth is getting its breath back. Well, I've been channel hopping this past few days on Christian channels on Sky. I don't normally watch them. I think you have to be careful of some things sometimes. But I thought I'd have a look. And the quietness that I spoke of just, well, there wasn't much on these channels that I could describe as quiet. Not least when I looked. And I might be doing them a disservice, but this was my experience. Because everyone seemed to be pacing up and down a stage in a big arena, shouting at me. And it made me recoil. To retreat inwardly and put my defences up. And if this is what it means to be a Christian, I thought, I don't want it, thank you very much. And besides, I find it difficult to shout, so that would preclude me from any preaching ministry, because I can only shout when I'm really angry, and that's very, very rare. But even when I do, the reaction of those around me is to just laugh. Maybe I could have a laughing healing ministry. And I wondered how attractive this is to someone who just may be curious about faith. And yes, I can see that you could be drawn in by the emotion that it engenders. But faith is not a feeling, is it? Not only were they shouting at me, I started to shout them myself, I think. Not only were they shouting at me, but they were variously trying to sell me things or asking me to donate money to millionaire ministers. And I was promised if I donated, if I sent money in, it would come back to me tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold. And then they asked one or two channels. They were asking for a donation for something called miracle water. They would send miracle water to me that came from this secret place. For if I sent, so many dollars, I can't remember what it was. And they'd throw a miracle cloth in. Not only the miracle water, but a miracle cloth as well. And on one channel I was asked to place whatever was causing me problems, pain or whatever, to place wherever it was on the screen. The mind works overtime sometimes. But I was told I was healed after that. But I couldn't help thinking about the vulnerable and the desperate and what that does to them. Now I'm aware that God can work through anyone or any particular situation. I'm sure that God works through those people that I'm talking about sometimes. Or despite those people. But for me, there was just too much selling, too many easy promises and too much shouting, because I wanted quiet and I wanted solitude. And let me tell you a story about my first experience of finding God in the quiet from my childhood. When I was a young child, I was probably 5 or 6, I know that age because my sister hadn't come along, Linda, and I was about 6.5 when she was born. I'd been an only child for quite some time, all that time, and the first grandchild of my grandparents, and I was always in the company of adults, I think. Never much time alone. And I think I yearned for that time alone. But the only time I was alone, I seemed to be alone, was when my mum went out to hang the washing out. Usually a Monday. Strange, isn't it? How it always seemed to be a Monday. I don't think that's the case anymore, is it? With washing machines and spin dryers and tumble dryers and so on. It was the old copper then. I don't mean an old policeman, I mean, you know what I mean. Anyway, we lived in a first floor flat on Castlebridge Road in Wensfields, and so Mum had to go downstairs to hang the washing out. And I established a routine that those in the psychiatric profession, and probably yourselves, would have a field day on. Because when my mum shut the front door, I'd quickly take my clothes off. I'd look through the kitchen window to see my mum at the washing line, dash into the living room to the sideboard where there was a drawer with insurance books in it, cooperative insurance. You know, in the days when the insurance man used to call to collect the premiums. I think the man's name was Mr. Dollymore. Anyway, I'd quickly look through these insurance books, and there were just lines, 2 and 6, 2 and 6, 2 and 6, and then occasionally there'd be a missed payment when Mum and Dad didn't have the money, presumably. And then I'd put them back. I'd dash to the kitchen window again, see how far my mum had gone with her washing. And then I'd dash back to the sideboard, open a box of playing cards that was in there with some nude ladies on the back. No, not on their back, on the back of the cards before I get any written complaints. The pictures were very modest by today's standards. And I'd flick through the cards quickly, not really knowing what I was looking at. And then I'd put them back in the box. Then I'd dash back into the kitchen, look through the window, and I could tell then that Mum was nearly finished usually. And then I'd dash back into the living room, get a small screwdriver out of the sideboard, and then make a little mark with it on the windowsill. Put the screwdriver back and start getting dressed. Remember, I'd done all this while naked. I'd be out of breath when my mum came through the door. And invariably I'd have my jumper or my trousers or my socks on wrong, back to front or whatever. And my mum would always wonder why. And I remember using the excuse sometimes that I'd been to the toilet, Mum. I'd done all the most daring things I could think of. And I think it felt a little bit like freedom. Now, I do the same now when Mavoyne goes out to hang the washing, except we pay our insurance by direct debit and we haven't got any playing cards, hence the proliferation of marks on the windowsill. But one day I went down with my mum when she took the washing down, and I took a pile of comics with me. And when she'd finished, I asked if I could stay there. It was a beautiful day. And I started to read my comics, and then I stopped when I felt the most overwhelming sense of peace, as if the world had stopped for a few minutes and I became fully immersed in the moment. I didn't want it to end, but I didn't quite understand what the feeling was. And looking back, I feel that it was my first experience of the grace of God, that He chose to spend those moments with me. It was a profound experience to the 6-year-old me. And looking back, it's still that profound experience. You see, sometimes we have to be still. We have to enter the quiet and be alone with God. In the noises of our everyday lives, we can mishear Him or not hear Him at all. Like I couldn't hear Him through all the shouting on those TV channels. And sometimes just daily life conspires to block our hearing. Sometimes it's our wants that we identify as needs. We have to come aside, just as Jesus did, when the crowds got too noisy, too demanding. Come aside and you will have a better chance that you won't mishear him in the quiet. And the following is a poem that I wrote when I was on Holy Island, which speaks to this. And it says, it's called The Great Silence. Words separate me from the silence of the tongue and of the heart. Let me enter the silence, the stillness of the peace, and speak of nothing now but silence, the first language of God. I long to tread the solitude of the silent spaces, the quiet earth, the deep waters where the heart stills and the mind does not trouble, where time and distance cease to be, in the place of the now. Nothing old and nothing new in this moment, standing on the shores of the great silence. I am, and he is. Well, that's the end of another thought for today. And as always, keep safe, look after yourselves, look after each other, and God bless, and I hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.